Yes, again, just to make a few points. I'll start by recognizing really that the climate justice recognizes we are not all equally impacted by climate chaos. So when we look at what is happening, particularly in the poorest regions, in the poorest countries of the world, in the global south, the populations there, the communities there are the most impacted, and the poorest in those countries are the most impacted. And I think it's really important point to recognize and acknowledge. Those populations are seeing the most extreme weathers because of lack of funding as well, reckless sort of exploitation of resources as well. So the people in the global south have been fleeing climate chaos now for many, many years, and it's only getting worse. In terms of the environmental degradation, more and more people are becoming climate refugees. So on a global south, migration is becoming an increasing phenomena. Population displacements in countries like where I come from, India, Philippines, African countries, other countries. So, I think it's important for us here to say that climate justice means solidarity with all refugees everywhere, and that we acknowledge and we proudly say that all refugees are welcome here. So a demand of the climate justice is to say, open the borders and let the refugees in. We know that the climate, in terms of racism, is becoming worse and worse. The poverty in global south is also because of the legacy of the centuries of plunder and colonial exploitation. I think that point also has to be made. So therefore, I think the demand of the climate justice as well is that the climate debt rich industrialized countries of the global north owe the debt to the global south. That has to be one of the key demands of the climate justice movement. Global north is responsible for 92% of carbon emissions and has pushed the global warming beyond safe limits, as we know, which is why we're all here. So that, I want to make that point strongly, really, that the fight for climate justice is linked with saying the refugees are welcome here and the fight against racism. And few more points really to make that we are facing the most right-wing government, Tory government, with people like Suella Braverman, who have, done their utmost best to fan the flame of racism by talking about things like, the word invasion, that we are being invaded by refugees. That, some of the results of that is the attack that happened in the Manston refugee center, where that person, the far right, who is very much, influenced by people like Tommy Robinson, went and firebombed that place and potentially could have killed many, many people. So that is a direct result of racism that continues to be pushed by the Tory government from the top, from that government, who are doing their utmost best to maintain the hostile environment against refugees. When you actually read about some of the conditions, the appalling conditions that the refugees are placed in, not just, that's not just country abroad. In this country, is absolutely outrageous. Women, children, men are treated, appallingly. So the Tories, Suella Braverman, and the rest of them are intent to, continue really sort of pushing out that message that, making it very difficult for refugees to come to this country, and, under the guise of saying that it's really about stopping the people smugglers and so on. But actually, it's not about that. It's actually about tightening that. And in the process, racism is increasing. And the people, it's not just the Tory right wing, but it's also the far right who are using that as a sort of, a go-ahead then to try and spread fear, spread division in our communities. So in Cardiff, for example, very recently, they tried to use the issue about refugees being placed in a local hotel to try and call like a protest there. This is a very dangerous situation that we're facing. And I think, we have to say that we have to unite against racism. So the fight against climate chaos, the fight for climate justice is very much linked with fight against racism. It's important that black and white people unite, that it's important in these demonstrations where we are, that we also raise that issue. And then just finish by saying that every year there is a UN Day Against Racism to acknowledge, to mark that day really, but also use that opportunity to come together, black and white people to come together and make that stance against racism. And that's going to be happening again next March. In this country and internationally, and the demonstration is going to happen in Cardiff as well on the 18th of March. So I want to say it will be important for all of us to be there. It's very important that there is a climate justice block on that demonstration, that those fights, our fights, are linked together. It's very important that we continue to make that stand. So yeah, that's the only way that we are going to really push back the hostile environment against racism. Is the only way we come together and continue to fight for climate justice. So thanks very much.